I'm Eric Savitz. I'm an editor with Barron's magazine, and I'm excited today to be talking to two people from Fiserv, Nandan Sheth, who's Fiserv's global head of digital commerce, and Vivian Greentree, who's Fiserv's senior VP and head of global corporate citizenship. We're going to be talking about technology and the greater good and the new normal. Fiserv, if you are unaware, is a leader in the payments and financial technology space. They work with brands like Amazon and Exxon and Home Depot, Dunkin' Donuts, Ford, Dell, lots of interesting companies. And I'm excited to have this discussion. I welcome Nandan and Vivian to the stage. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. This has been, of course, a remarkable and difficult year for many people, and a lot of what Fiserv's business does plays right into some of the major issues of the day, dealing with payments and retailing, and trying to maintain a normal business cadence in a very difficult environment. Tell us a little bit about how that the situation has impacted the way that you do business and the way that you serve your customers.
Sure, I'll kick it off. Firstly, good afternoon, and thanks again for having us. Delighted to be here. So, Eric, as you know, the pandemic has changed consumer habits and behavior, in my opinion, forever. This trend has exponentially shown up in growth with regards to digital commerce, digital enablement. So, as you think about our clients, they're looking at us to help them with these new commerce journeys and help them with a suite of solutions that can enable consumer experiences.
So give me an example of a company or a situation that has fundamentally had to remake the way they do business, where you've played a part.
Yeah, I think before I get into the details of that, maybe a little bit around kind of digital transformation and how some of our largest customers are thinking about digital transformation. As you know very well, digital transformation has been on the agenda for many of our clients, whether they be biller clients, FI clients, or what we call merchants, for many, many years. The COVID situation and the pandemic has merely accelerated that trend. And these consumers, these merchants, these banks, FIs, and these billers are looking at new ways of enabling omni-channel or omni-commerce into their experiences. A really good example of an industry that has had to catch up is the grocery industry. As you know very well, the grocery industry has had very much an in-store experience for most of their consumers. With the pandemic and with COVID becoming a real safety issue, many of the grocers had to scramble to create online experiences, curbside pickup, and a variety of different tools to enable safer payment transactions, either using their phone or using contactless cards. We have a dominant share of the grocery segment, and as such, we've partnered with some of the largest brands in the country. And one that comes to mind is Albertson, which is one of the largest grocers in the country, where we enabled a scan and go and also a touchless payment wallet as the support for such technologies and such capabilities becomes a need for their clients across the United States.
I wonder how many of those kinds of changes, like that kind of contactless transaction, is likely to remain part of the landscape as we eventually emerge from the pandemic. So there's sort of two kinds of business changes. There are those kinds of business changes that may be temporary in nature, but it feels like in many cases we've kind of ratcheted forward in a way that we're not going to go back. And I wonder how you look at that and whether you think we've had it. This is really a sea change moment that, I mean, was created by a crisis, but where we really are seeing a change in the way e-commerce is going to play a role in the sort of multi-channel model that you see for like grocers, where they really didn't have much for a multi-channel model before.
Yeah, I think contactless and mobile payments have been emerging in waves. So if you think about kind of the first wave as being contactless cards, wave two being mobile wallets that enable a NFC transaction. The next wave, where Fiserv is spending some time with its clients and its partners, are around two segments. One is enabling QR technology. If you think about Asia, QR technology is very prevalent, and QR technology for both what we call in-person and digital or e-commerce transactions is very much a reality. So we're doing a lot of work with our partners around QR technology. And kind of the emerging technology that we're working with is conversational commerce, where you have the ability to use your voice assistant either on your phone or in your car to enable a commerce transaction. A great example of this is our partnership with Amazon Alexa and ExxonMobil, where if you go to Alexa on your phone or in your car and say, Alexa, pay for gas, and if you're at an Exxon gas station, it will triangulate, figure out exactly where you are, let you tell the Alexa which pump you're at, open up the pump, let you pump gas, and then drive away. So it's very much an Uber-esque experience. And I think those types of experiences will further accelerate what I'm calling the touchless payment ecosystem.
You also work. You've done some interesting work during this time period on enabling government payments of various kinds to consumers. This is particularly true, I think, for EBT for supermarket transactions. And I think it would be interesting if you could talk a little bit about how that has unfolded, which has really made a big difference in the lives of many.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to have Vivian talk a little bit about what we're doing kind of in the community. And then I'll definitely parlay that into what we're doing with EBT transactions. Vivian, why don't I kind of hand off to you?
Sure. Sure. And I always write so much when Nandan talks, like I always learn something. So even though we're on the same team, still learning too. And I do think, all the great things he's talking about and that his team and our entire enterprise is doing, Fiserv is one of the largest fintechs on the planet. We like to say the best fintech on the planet. And we do know and think that we have a special, unique position to move money in a way that truly does move the world forward. We have a global platform to do well while doing good. And, for our associates, for our clients, for our communities, from Main Street to Wall Street. And, we're lucky enough, at least some of us, to do it right here from Peachtree Street. And, but we do, we innovate with purpose, realizing that what we do has impact on people's lives, small businesses' lives, the global economy's lives, and success of small businesses and global enterprises alike throughout the ecosystem. And so when we look to build these solutions and product sets, and we look to build in financial access, inclusion, and literacy into those solutions and systems, so that we can do things like democratize data for our small business and put them, give them the power and the knowledge that our enterprise clients have, and the same through technology. Because we know that knowledge is power. And we're in financial services, we know that moving and managing money, to Nandan's point, it's very personal. And it's also very public, and it's, we don't take that lightly. And that's how that mindset really shapes how we look at technology, how we innovate, keeping in mind that we're solving real problems for real people, but that we also have a real responsibility to build inclusion, equity, and access into the innovation process, because business, I think the title of the title of the panel, business can and should be a force for good. And quite often our CEO, Frank Bisignano, says we have an obligation, but more than that, we have an opportunity to use our space and place to create access and collaborate so that we can excel together, and not, ROI is return on investment, but we also get that return on inclusion.
So, Vivian, what this has been a particularly difficult period for small businesses, and we hear terrible stories about the number of restaurants and retailers that aren't going to make it through. We've already lost quite a few. but others are doing innovative things to try and stay in operation. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the kinds of things you're doing with small business to help them persevere through this difficult period.
Sure. I mean, and we started back in March when small businesses really started being affected by COVID and social distancing and moving them online. Some had never had websites before. Some that didn't have the back end all built up. You know, we like to say just because you love to bake cupcakes doesn't mean you know how to draw them, count for them or the number of people that it will take to sling them around and accept payment in a secure fashion and at the point of thought that the consumer wants it. So we set up our Clover Business Solutions website very early then and reached out to all of our clients. We did a lot of that kind of hygiene with our own clients. We also though launched a back to business campaign to recognize that some businesses had been disproportionately infected and affected by the pandemic and looking at enabling them to survive, but then also thrive as we built, inclusion into the recovery efforts. And so one of our programs we're very proud of is our Back to Business campaign, which is a multi-year commitment to small minority-owned businesses that have been disproportionately affected. And we've introduced it and launched it in Brooklyn, and we're rolling it out in other key markets. We launched it here in Atlanta 2 weeks ago with some great partners with the Atlanta Metro Chamber, the Georgia Chamber, the Atlanta Business League, the Atlanta Village Market, which we've been doing some Saturday schools with. Again, just bringing subject matter expertise to small business aggregators and resource providers, because we'll continue to give away the $1 million in grants for Atlanta-specific small businesses. But that's really just the first piece, and to match that that short-term investment with this long-term commitment to the ecosystem, because we know that the financial infusion is vital, but that what will sustain, success and carry us through will be the connections that we make holistically with the coaching and the mentoring and access to capital and access to, larger networks of small businesses who are ready to start or scale. And of course, our Clover point of sale platform, but also our strategic our strategic partners who are looking to open up their portfolios and say, what are we doing and how can we do it together to be better together?
It's more than just about the services you provide, right? It's providing the counseling, coaching, holding their hand through this process.
We say, we sell products, but we provide solutions. And that's really integrating into the fabric of the, local entrepreneurial ecosystems. And as we've worked with different regions across the country, we see that different chambers, different aggregators, different resource providers come at it differently. And we learn from each of those engagements to do it, holistically and meet small businesses where they're at and meet the resource providers, where they're at. Here in Atlanta, we're very lucky to have the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is bringing together, federal, regional, state, public, private in the best way possible, so that there's really a no wrong door philosophy. If they can get there, and if by applying to our grant they somehow find out about the Russell Center, or get connected to Lakeisha at the Village Market, or what the Georgia Chamber is doing with small diverse businesses, then with or without a grant, they will have enlarged their sphere of who their coaches and mentors and access and network could be.
So let's talk a little bit about both sort of the flip side, which is not just helping small business or even larger businesses cope through this period, but also helping consumers figure out the best way to connect with merchants that they choose to connect with, and figuring out the right payment solutions while protecting themselves. Talk about some of the things that you're doing to make commerce easier, safer, healthier for consumers in this period.
Yeah, so let me maybe kick this one off, Eric. So we're very passionate about the consumer experience, and we feel that the consumer experience as it relates to convenience and safety is a right to all consumers. It should have no dependency on your financial situation. So as such, one of the initiatives that we're, as a company, so proud of is what we've done with the United States Department of Agriculture, otherwise known as USDA. With the USDA, we have been a strategic technology partner to allow the 40 million consumers that are on food stamps. These consumers use government debit cards called EBT cards, electronic benefits transfer cards. And unfortunately, prior to the partnership with Fiserv, there was no way for a consumer to make an online transaction. Meaning, if they wanted to buy groceries using that card, the only option the consumer had was to go in-store and do an in-store face-to-face purchase. As you can imagine, with the pandemic, there was a lot of concern, especially concern with the elderly or with children in regular day-to-day journeys that we all make, such as going to the grocery store. So for me and you, it's very easy to do an online delivery or an online purchase and pick up at the curbside. There's no way for those 40 million consumers to do so because each transaction is PIN enabled. So Fiserv worked with the federal government to enable what we call a PIN on glass technology that allows the authentication of a PIN on your mobile phone. So now you could be a EBT card holder and you could go to an online grocer and have the same convenience that me and you have. And we're so proud of this. This didn't exist. It was in pilot, but it didn't really exist. Maybe 2 to 3 states were piloting it. Now I'm so proud to announce that we have 40 states that support this. We'll be up to 50 very soon. And of those 40 states, we have some of the largest online grocers in the country that have enabled this transaction type. So our first two, and they've been great partners, Walmart and Amazon, were the first two to adopt this during the pandemic. And we've gone from serving just a handful of online EBT customers to millions and millions of customers using this online EBT transaction at the likes of Safe Right. We've got Aldi coming up. We've got Ahold coming up, Instacart coming up. So I think it's important to underscore that technology can help and be the force for good, as Vivian said, across different segments.
So what's interesting to me about that is that's a very complicated multi-party situation, right? So you need to get consumers, who I'm sure we're very happy to have this, but they need to be educated about how the process works. You need to sign up the retailers one at a time, and you need support from the USDA to support the back end to get the infrastructure in place. How difficult was this to roll out, and was it? Did you get resistance either from the federal side or from any of the retailers about making this transition, which is a major change in the way that they operate for this payment system?
It's such a great question, and let me start with the consumer. You're so right. Changing consumer habits and the consumer experience is so important when you're rolling out something over 40 million consumers. So we kept the consumer experience so intuitive that if you go to enter your PIN to validate the transaction, it almost looks like a physical PIN pad. And it's very intuitive in terms of you don't have to create a new PIN. Use the same PIN as the PIN that you use at the point of sale. So I think the consumer experience, we spent a lot of time thinking through. And I think, you never get consumer experience right, so we're still tweaking it. But I think we're on a good journey there. Number two, the merchants, I can't tell you how supportive the grocers were. In the middle of a pandemic, many of the grocers have actually changed their technology prioritization to enable this process. And this is not about adding more revenue. This is really, for most of those grocers, it's helping the consumers. And then, as I mentioned, we had a pilot that was ongoing with the federal government, which had, a couple of states, the federal government working with the state, the state government did a great job of going from a state or 2 states to 40 states in about 90 days. Unheard of. So I can't tell you how powerful kind of the village mentality was in making this a reality. But it's not easy.
So so you've also had some involvement in some other government programs that have directly impacted lots of people, right? PPP loans and other things. Talk a little bit about some of the other roles that Fiserv has played during this period in getting people, crucial financial support that they needed to make it on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely, and I'd love for Vivian to chime in after this, but as you know, Fiserv has a very diverse set of clients. We serve bank issuers or FIs. We serve large, small, and medium merchants, and we serve government. And then we serve a community called billers, which is kind of embedded within those three pillars. So to answer your question, we worked with the U.S. Treasury and the CARES Act to push out stimulus payments to 4 million consumers in the United States, 4 million Americans, on a prepaid card. So these were consumers where the federal government either did not have their bank account details, or the consumer may not have had a bank account, or the consumer just wanted a different form of payment. We created this option in a matter of days and launched it in nationally with the federal government. And as I mentioned, we pushed out 4 million payments to those prepaid cards using an asset that Fiserv has called the Money Network. Vivian?
I would just, echo that. It was a huge pivot. There were a lot of people on that kind of tiger team, and I mean, in the time when everybody was trying to do what they could, our first best use of our resources, we were able to pivot and then provide not just the product, but really a solution in that we were helping people actually use those cards who might not have understood what they were getting or had been underbanked before that. And it's really just about, when we go to market, when we innovate, we're, and Frank always calls himself, the grand collaborator. You really do see that, because when you see our big clients, our small clients, enterprise, global, we're at the middle of it, and we have an opportunity to create structural financial inclusion, an opportunity to accelerate these community efforts, whether they're commercial or not, but while constructively elevating, our own engagement and value-driven, purpose towards diversity and inclusion, and investing into local ecosystems, knowing, the macro feeds the micro. And so, we always put an eye towards that. Whatever Nandan's doing, he's always leading the pack. And then we're looking at how can we make sure that we're doing that for associates, clients, and communities, to be a good, a corporate citizen, and really use that technology for the greater good.
Perfect. And with that, I have to say we've run out of time. I've been given the high sign. Thank you, Nandan and Vivian, for a really great conversation. I wish we had more time. There's a lot to talk about. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.